What does it mean to be a person? How did you get to be the way that you are? Is it all just predetermined based on cause and effect to which you never really ever had a choice to begin with? As was the classic debate, is it nature or nurture that determines who you are? Now, after watching the show Severance, these were a couple of the questions that I kept thinking about days to weeks afterwards. Hello everyone, I'm the Malmadius, and I have to say this show is phenomenal. Many of you guys might know me from my Breaking Bad analysis videos, but I really gotta say, this show pushes what makes good television. It's been on my radar for a while, but because I don't have Apple TV Plus, I haven't been able to watch it. But now that Vince Gilligan has his new show on Apple TV Plus, I'm sure a lot of you guys are just gonna go ahead and take the plunge. So while you're there, you need to check out Severance. I think it's best if you watch it blind, so all I'll say is if you loved the masterful acting, writing, and especially the cinematography of Better Call Saul, you're gonna love Severance. And if you don't want to shill out all that money for a subscription service, you can just check out the DVD at your local library. Side note, did you guys know you can get shows, movies, and even video games at your local libraries? I thought it was all just books and stuff, but no, so shout out to these guys. But let's not waste any more time and dive right in. Today we're gonna answer those questions I raised at the top of the show. What does it mean to be a person? And how did you get to be the way that you are? And we're gonna answer these questions all through the lens of the first character we see in the show, Helly R. So for those of you who ignored the spoiler warning at the top, or for those of you who might just need a refresher on the series, Severance tells the story of a company called Lumen Industries run by a mysterious founder, the exalted Egan family. Lumen Industries requires that all its workers undergo a procedure called severance. This procedure surgically divides workers' memories between their professional and personal lives. At work, the employees, known as their innies, remember nothing of the outside world, and vice versa, their outies know nothing about what happens at work. Essentially, when you're at work, you have no memory of your life outside of work, effectively trapping that part of your subconscious to be forever at work. And when you leave work, you have no memory of what occurred during that workday.
So I'll never leave here.
You'll leave at 5, but it won't feel like it, not to this version of you anyway.
Do I have a family?
You'll never know.
And I have no choice.
Well, every time you find yourself here, it's because you chose to come back.
And the whole thing is baked with overtones of this corporate unease, beautifully incorporating a constant tension through its liminal space type horror. Really reminiscent of the Backrooms. Most of the show takes place at work, and we get to really understand the needs and wants of these work sides of themselves. And it's fascinating to see how their corresponding outies live and behave, and how it differs from the innies. Even though these are the same people essentially, biologically identical to each other, they grow into completely different personalities and develop different ideologies based on their different environments. So what truly makes a person a person? In the show, we follow the innies that work in the MDR department. There's Irving, Dylan, Mark, the new department chief after the previous one went missing, and their newest recruit, Helly R. First, there was nothing. Then suddenly,
who are you?
Awake! Helly R is awake for her orientation. She has no memories, no history, no name she can claim as her own. Yet from her first moments, she exhibits curiosity, will, and emotion. She asks,
Hello?
Hi there. You on the table? I wonder if you'd mind taking a brief survey.
Who is that?
and immediately she rebels against her confinement, attempting to escape multiple times and refuses to believe anything the overspeaker, who we later find out is Mark, says. Then the reality of her situation arises when the overspeaker asks her, "What color were your mother's eyes?"
To the best of your memory, what is or was the color of your mother's eyes?
Okay, what's happening?
All of a sudden, the reality of her situation sets in. Whereas her first instinct was fear and a drive to take control of her situation, now she's able to take a pause and truly understand the depravity of what happened to her. She has no other memories. This is all that is, and all that ever was. As Helly begins to understand her place in Lumen Industries, she keeps up her strong and uncompromising character. She actively fights against this prison life that she's in and forces her way out the best that she can. During this notable scene, she keeps attempting to leave the office only to miraculously end up back at work. And she tries this over and over again, throwing herself out at some points, trying to break free. We later see the other half of this splice scene in the next episode, where the Audi, Helena, reacts to her innie being so forceful and so insistent on leaving.
You're an inquisitive one.
I don't want to be in there, do I?
You're learning that you do.
When realizing that physically escaping won't work, that every moment she tries to leave, she just ends up right back at work, she threatens her Audi with a paper guillotine. After giving in to her demands, the workplace offers Helly the opportunity to plead with her Audi, thinking she can be reasonable and articulate her issues with that current arrangement. So she makes the video. And she makes it even knowing that if her Audi stops going to work, then her innie's consciousness will effectively die. And even so, her resolve has never been stronger.
Hey,
It's just like Killmonger once said.
Death was better than bondage.
She's never stopped fighting since she started working on the floor, and now she finally has an audience with herself. And it seems like an obvious victory because she obviously knows what's best for her work self. And because she's literally the same person, she should have no problem convincing herself to quit this job. And she says one final goodbye to all of her workers before all of a sudden waking up again at work. Now she's confused, upset, and doesn't understand why her Audi would willingly go back to work. And then she gets the video. It turns out her Audi recorded a message for her too.
I understand that you're unhappy with the life that you've been given. But you know what? Eventually we all have to accept reality. I am a person. You are not. Your resignation request is denied. Turn it off.
Look at that sense of entitlement, that arrogance shining through every word, every bit of fake sympathy. And watch how defeated she is after listening to all that. Having listened to herself defy her own existence and right to live, a right to choose. Complete and utter defeat. But from everything we've seen from Helly, she's not one to give up so easily. She's one who is willing to continue fighting for what she deserves, no matter what the cost. And knowing she now has no voluntary way out, she chooses more drastic measures. Now, I'm not one to glamorize suicide by any means, nor do I think the idea of romanticizing such a final solution to a temporary problem is reasonable. But when I see this, I reflect on one of the great Shakespearean tragedies. In Hamlet, one of the female characters, Ophelia, ends up tragically killing herself. I think that play is very much a representation of the attitudes of the times, as killing herself is the only real option or even leverage that she has as a woman in that society. And when I reflect on Helly and her decision, it really emphasizes how trapped she is, literally unable to leave that prison of her existence. But listen, I know this is a very serious, complicated, and difficult topic, so if you're comfortable, please let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Anyways, although this attempt does not work, her fire for resistance continues to ignite.
I choose Defiant Jazz.
And although her overall life experience is short at this time, she fights for herself, her friends, the people she loves, all in hope for something better. All these things define who we are and shape us in how we react, to defend, to appreciate, to live by all of these things. And in those actions, it defines what it means to be a human being. Now, this is a more interesting side of the story. At first, Helena seems to be just like any other reasonable person undergoing the severance procedure. She even seems to show concern for her innie at the aforementioned hallway scene. However, that videotape really establishes who she is as a person. And although I think her proclamation of, "I am a person, you are not," is truly devastating, the line that always sticks out with me the most is, "Turn it off." Now, it's been months since I last watched the show, and that line still echoes in my head. The way she looks off camera, ordering whomever the operator was, probably Milchek if I were to guess, to shut off the recording, like this whole ordeal was completely beneath her. The audacity for her innie to even broach such a subject. But then comes the big reveal, when we finally realize who that person really is. All during the season 1 finale. At first, we can just see glimpses of it. The style, the class, the exalted environment. All of a sudden, this dismissive arrogance starts to make sense. And it's recontextualized based on the clear generational wealth that Helena is a part of. And yet the show still tries to blur the lines as we move forward into season 2. When you look at everything that comes after, you can see a clear difference between how Helena engages in pursuing her goals versus how Helly does. Helena is much more patient, subdued, manipulative, all qualities that surely have gotten her success in her world of white-collar deals. She's willing to go so far as to manipulate everybody in order to get what she wants. Meanwhile, Helly is her own free spirit, very headstrong and steadfast in pursuing her goals. And the main question season 2 tries to ask is, how do we get to be the way that we are? And there's many different episodes that showcase this question, none more so front and center than that infamous episode following Mrs. Cobell, one of the top employees at Lumen Industries. However, that's its own can of worms and best saved for another video if you guys want to see it. Many other times during the season will the two personalities be compared to each other as wonderful foils of each other. This is so prominent that it's a major subplot during the course of that season. And the show at this point continues emphasizing the parallels and highlighting the differences between Helly and Helena. And of course, one of the more obvious differences is even in her demeanor, in the way that she talks, it's much more subtle and subdued.
What you said to me last night, it was cruel. Helly was never cruel.
Which makes sense due to the volatile world and market that's her bread and butter, as well as the implied influence of her family on her personality. And it's really interesting to see these differences between Helena and Helly, because they are the same person, right?
What the hell?
Hey there.
What the hell?
But when you really think about it, Helena has had this whole lifetime to grow and develop into her own person. Meanwhile, Helly has only been alive for effectively less than a year. She woke up as a fully formed adult and born into this world on a whim, but she's not a completely hollow vessel either. She still has her own sense of self and determination despite the lack of any tangible experiences. It reminds me of how people with amnesia still retain a lot of their emotional personality despite not being able to actually remember their loved ones. So in a sense, that kind of goes against my previous point, where I said humans are defined by our relationships and what we're willing to do in response to those relationships. And while I was writing the script for this video, I keep thinking back to this one lesson back in high school biology. There was a research paper that showed in mice, if you tape one eye shut from birth, then the mouse will never gain the ability to see from that one eye, because it needs stimulation to develop, although all the connections are there. However, if you were to do the same thing and tape shut the eye of an adult mouse for a similar period of time, its vision will not be affected. And I think back to this because although Helly and Helena are literally the same person, they both exhibit different goals and characteristics, which manifest in their own actions. Helly shows an independent awareness of self, moral intuition, and drive for freedom. From a philosophical standpoint, drawing from Descartes or Locke, her capacity for thought and self-awareness marks her as a person, even if her memories are artificially limited. In his autobiography, Malcolm X says, "I have no mercy or compassion in me for a society that will crush people, and then penalize them for not being able to stand up under the weight. But it is only when a man realizes that he himself is responsible for his condition, and still has the power to change it, that he becomes a man." I see this struggle manifest in all the characters of Severance, all of the MDR workers on the severed floors, and even in higher-ups like Mrs. Cobell and Milchek. Oh man, Milchek, I can't believe I barely mentioned him in this video. Maybe if you guys want, I can make a video about him because his character is just the best. But anyway, I knew I wasn't going to solve that classic nature versus nurture debate that's been raging on for, what, like a century now? But I love how the show proposes these questions that we've heard a million times before, and uses the medium of television to its fullest potential to explore these questions. It's such a phenomenal show, and I can't wait to see more. Last time I asked you guys who was your favorite cartel Don in Breaking Bad, and unsurprisingly, Don Hector won out. So today I want to know, who was your favorite character in the MDR department? Was it Mark, Irving, Dylan, or Helly? Vote for it in the pinned comment down below. And I want to know, have any of you guys seen the show Pluribus yet? Let me know what your thoughts on the show if you've seen it, because I haven't come around to seeing it just yet. And hey, if you've made it this far, check out this video on the screen, and if you like that one too, then you might as well subscribe. Thanks again. I'm the Malmadius, and as always, have a great day, and make it a great day for someone else. Take care, everybody.
Buscaró, lai 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 lai.